animal welfare. All I can say is that every time a big truck drives by with pigs inside of it, I do cry, and they look very sad.
Can you tell me what the Farm Bill is?
Nope. Farm Bill? Yeah, nope.
Animal welfare? Well, I assume that's when an animal family is below the poverty line and receives additional support from the government. So the Farm Bill is the man who has worked on the farm for 80 years.
Tell me, what do you know about Proposition 12 in California?
Oh, nothing.
I know nothing about that. I'm so sorry.
Animal welfare, like how they take care of the animals.
You know, agricultural and food things.
I don't know what the Farm Bill is.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the CAPod. My name is Sidney Schnor, and today I am here with
Fally MK, popularly known as Dr. MK, the instructor for Communicating Contemporary Issues in Agriculture class, which is part of this podcast.
Yeah. We have Dr. MK on today as our special guest to introduce Season 3. To kind of kick it off, since we did this for Season 2, and just kind of seeing the difference between one year to the next. So I have some questions for you for this little interview. And what are you the most excited about for this new season?
Yeah, that's a good question. I was like, okay, I'm excited about the topics that the students are going to cover, and I know that we always look for contemporary issues, like the name of the podcast, but I feel like in this season, we really did focus on things that are most current, and not to preempt the whole podcast or the whole season, but we had students talk about real issues that were in the news over the summer last year. So in Iowa, we had the issue about nitrate infiltration. So it was good to hear students explore and dig deep into that and listen to people's perspectives. So I feel like that's really something that excites me, but also the growth that I've seen in the students, because I feel like this is really one of the classes that I feel like so far, I've seen that the students are beginning to capture what the essence of the course is about. Like, you know, how the students, when they come to class the first week, everybody's excited about the podcast. So it's like, you know, for me, this podcast is a product after we have learned about everything else. But the students come to class like everybody looking forward to having to produce the podcast. So it's really exciting to see the excitement in the students as they're looking forward to work on the project, and also seeing the growth in the students. This being my third year, I can say that I have seen that growth in myself as well, about like looking at how the students are preparing for the podcast, like in terms of their interviewing skills. I'm seeing it improve more and more, and I'm so sure that the listeners are going to enjoy this episode, because there's a lot of maturity and there's a lot of growth as well. So the growth is really reflected by me coming up with other ways of like trying to make sure that the students engage with the content, but also especially they are able to know how to ask questions and pick topics that they can talk about. Because if you think about it, I feel like at the beginning, which is something that I've learned as the course continued, the students were just excited about any topic. You know, they would say, oh, this is really interesting. But now I see them like reflecting, like, okay, am I comfortable talking about this? Am I not going to be biased when I talk about this? You know, do I have like, you know, a strong emotional attachment to this issue that maybe to affect my discussion about the topic? Because like you all know, this podcast is not about us like sharing our strong opinions. It's about listening to everybody, and sometimes if you hold strong opinions, they do affect how you listen, especially when you talk about active listening to other people's perspectives.
Yeah, and that kind of speaks to the emotional intelligence that, and me being the TA, and kind of some background for the listeners, like I TA the class and I do the editing for the podcast, but also within the class, there's a whole unit about emotional intelligence and what, you know, walking the students through some of those things that you were just talking about. So yeah, that is definitely a huge part. Kind of on the same vein of that, did you make any other changes to the class that you want to specify?
Yeah, of course, we like with every teaching, every time you learn something. So one thing that I've discovered, like I did learn something and that it changed things. One thing that I did change, like you said, emotional intelligence. The first time I taught the class, I did not really focus on emotional intelligence because I was taking it like, okay, it's okay, and I didn't really spend time to talk about it. But for this class and last class as well, I did spend some time to talk about the importance of emotional intelligence. And specifically, I spent so much time on that because during the first time I taught the class, I had some students who were uncomfortable to talk about things that they felt like, they were not in line with their their values or their beliefs. But also when they were choosing the topics, most of the students were choosing topics that they felt that they want to hear from people who have the same views like them, not other people. So after going through the whole process of knowing about what emotional intelligence is about and how you can really promote that in a conversation, I feel like the students kind of saw a lot of growth in that. So that addition of the emotional intelligence part of this course, I feel like is so important, and I've seen the impact that it has brought to the whole discussion. But also I would say for this semester, I had more of the guest speakers also emphasizing on the power of emotional intelligence. So I feel like that also contributed to really helping the students to be prepared and be emotionally intelligent when they were picking the topics, so that they are also aware of how it can be difficult for them to talk about some other things, and being aware of I can't talk about this because I will not be objective. I feel like that's important. And yeah, the other change is that one of the things about this course is that I really do try to promote peer evaluation. And for the first time last not this class, but last class, when I say last class, like last season, right? During the last season, I did employ Critic. This is like an AI software that you embed in Canvas or whatever platform you use, and it provides opportunity for students to give each other feedback. The first semester, I feel like the first time I used it, it did work a little bit better, but then the second time, it did not work well because I feel like there was kind of a diversion from what I was looking to get from using the platform, because for me it was really trying to help the students to know which feedback they provided well and what worked well and what did not work well. But then I saw that it was requiring the students to also respond on other people's evaluation, which ended up making it difficult for the students to understand. So that change, I implemented it for the first part, but then later on we didn't continue with it, which I feel like it made it hard for students to really provide feedback to each other on different topics, because that was what I used in the previous semester, but for the past semester I did not do that. So now that's the change, that I didn't give them the chance to critically give feedback to each other on their topics. So that's something that's different at this time.
And circling back to the guest speakers that you were talking about, could you explain that setup to our listeners? I'm not sure I have explained that to them before. So could you give us a little bit more information about the guest speakers that you brought in and the purpose of the guest speakers for the class side of this podcast?
Yeah, because in this class we're really talking about contemporary issues, and most of the times there are topics that are current, that we have specific experts, and I'm not an expert in everything. I'm a science communicator. I'm not a biotechnologist. I'm not a geneticist. I mean, I don't know. I'm not an agronomist. I'm not a soil scientist. I'm not really an expert in those fields, but I just know how to communicate about science. So to make sure that the students understand those topics, for example, if you talk about biotechnology, I cannot teach about biotechnology, I don't have that expertise. So I bring in people who are experts in biotechnology so that they talk about what biotechnology is, what are the downfalls of that. And also some of the guest speakers will be the ones that have worked in the public facing side of communication for a long time, trying to bring some insights. What are some of the tips that have worked for them when communicating with people about issues that are controversial or that are contemporary? What are some of the strategies that they've used that have worked? So I have people who are practicing communicators. It can be even from some media houses, or can be from a corporate organization, wherever they are, if they are practicing but facing the public, because we want the students to understand how that looks like in real life, but also the actual experts in the field of agriculture science and technology are the ones that are kind of form a bulk of this class in terms of the guest lectures. So if I may answer your question, I would say I look for experts, whether they are communication experts in terms of like they're practicing, not just professors, but also the subject matter experts in terms of the field, like biotechnology, if you look at about policy, if you talk about soil science, all that.
Yeah, and you did talk about what you want the students to take away from those guest speakers. To pivot off of that, what do you hope listeners take away from the podcast this season?
Yeah, so that's a very important question. I would say for every podcast season, that's what I want the listeners to take away, is that that mindset where you are open to listen to other people. Like we said, the main purpose is to promote dialogue. We are living in a world where all of us have opinions, and sometimes we're stuck in our own values, our own beliefs, and our own truths that sometimes we don't know what other people are thinking. And for me, right now, when we think about agriculture, if we are really going to advance, I think it's high time that we are going to be open-minded and allow ourselves to listen to people who have different views. It doesn't mean that when we listen to them, we're going to change what we believe in, but it makes us understand where they're coming from. And for me, when we think about agriculture communication and really thinking about science communication, that's very important. Because if you're going to have a message that's tailor-made for a listener, you have to know where they're coming from. And you can't know where somebody is coming from unless you listen to them, So this podcast is really that opportunity to promote the dialogue, that ability to listen to others, because communication is not about talking, right? It's both you being able to listen and hear what other people are saying, and also you talking to the people. So I feel like we have done a lot of talking, and maybe sometimes it's good for us to spend some time to listen so that we really understand where people are coming from, and we can find solutions to really improve our communication if you listen more. I feel like sometimes we focus on talking more, but I have found it in my life that I learn better when I listen rather than when I'm talking. When I'm doing the talking, my brain is running all the time, and I don't even know what's going on. But when I listen, I feel like I learn a lot from people. Yeah.
I kind of had a moment like that last season when we were talking with Quentin and Kaylee talked to PETA. And I hadn't really thought about their messaging because I'm not a vegan, I'm not really a vegetarian. And I listened to that episode and I was like, wow, this is really fascinating. And definitely listening made me understand that perspective a lot more. It was just really interesting. I thought that was an absolutely fascinating perspective.
Yeah, no, I do agree with you. And I think that's the point, because I feel like most of the times we are stuck in our way of thinking. And because this is what is comfortable for us, especially for you and me, all of us, we're in science communication, we're social scientists, we are connected to agriculture, and we want that people should know where the food is coming from. It's so important. But because of our own biases, because of how we believe that as scientists, we are doing the right thing, sometimes we kind of build a wall, which, is exactly what you described, because certain organizations, certain groups of people are portrayed in a particular way. You just think like, okay, there's nothing that I can listen from them. Like, I can't learn anything from them. So you close the door before you can hear them or listen to what they're trying to say. So I feel like that's the challenge that we are facing, because all of us have been kind of, we're in a place where we're always believing that our way of thinking is the best. Yes, we can be the best, but you will not know where somebody's coming from if you don't give them a chance. So for me, it's more about give a chance to that person, because if they are misunderstanding something, how will you know that they're misunderstanding if you don't listen to them, right? So it's more about listening. Like you said, you had to listen to them to understand, to say, where my conclusions about them right or wrong, or can I learn something from them? Because, it's not about you changing to really align with what they're saying, but it gives you a better understanding to say, oh, okay, I didn't know why this person thinks this way, but now I do understand. And you start trying to process that information and see how best you can reach out to them. So that's the part of the emotional intelligence part of it, so that you know how you react, right?
Yeah, I thought that the bringing Pete on was such an interesting example of that. And just practice for myself. I think we can always get better at emotional intelligence. My next question for you is, how would you describe the topics covered by the students in their episodes this season? You kind of touched on one, saying that we were getting really contemporary, but how would you describe the ideas that students are coming with?
To be honest, students are so innovative. And that's one thing that for this class, I don't assign topics. And that's the beauty. You know, when you leave the students to pick what they want to talk about, when you leave them that, you give them that chance, you really get that opportunity to see how creative they can be. Because I know there were students who amazed me at the topics they picked. You know, we have discussions ranging from SNAP, it's policy, it was just, I don't know. I don't want to preempt the season, so I won't say everything that is there, but I'll just say, tune in and listen. And for me, I feel like I want the audience to get this, that these are topics, titles that are chosen by the students. We allow them to pick this, and they look for resources for themselves. We provide support wherever it is needed if they can find somebody. But the fact that students spend time to do research and to find a topic that is of interest to them, but also they are comfortable talking about it, and they can have guests that are going to share their perspectives is so amazing. And especially when you're talking about issues that are really happening then and there. I think sometimes it's easier for you to talk about things that have happened some time back, but when you're talking about things that have happened here and there, it's really amazing. And one thing that I also should mention is the thoughtfulness that the students gave to this. Because for the first time, I saw really students step out of their comfort zones and even talk about real issues. Like, I never thought that in this class I would talk about mental health issues, for example. But, in this season, some students talked about mental health among farmers. It's something that sometimes when you think about farmers, producers, we, as a public, I'm including myself as a public because I'm not a producer, I'm not a farmer.
You're a part of the public. I'm a part of the public.
So at this point, it's like I don't really think about what issues the farmers are facing, what issues the producers are facing, because sometimes we are good as people to point out to the mistakes that people are doing, but sometimes we don't really know the impact. So for me, it comes back to the emotional intelligence part of it. Like before you say something about somebody, do we really think about the impact? We really know what these people are struggling with. What other issues are they dealing with before we judge them or make any conclusions?
So my last question for you is, if you were a student in your class, what contemporary issue would you cover in your podcast episode?
Oh, my goodness. Really? Oh, my God.
Is there anything near and dear to your heart?
Yeah, honestly, the issue I would cover, and I know you say, okay, I knew you say this, and I'm okay. Yeah, you say I'm going to say this. Yeah, I would cover the issue about trust in science. That's something that is so dear to me because I feel like sometimes we take the word trust for granted and we use it so loosely. And there's so many reasons why people cannot trust us as social scientists or as bench scientists or as the scientific community. And really trying to dig deeper and just have people talk about why they don't trust scientists. And then those people who are scientists think about, share why they think they should be trusted, because I feel like that's an ongoing debate. If you think about everything nowadays, everybody has questions. And you think about now, when you think we combine the whole idea about trust and the use of generative AI or just thinking about artificial intelligence at large, there's so many questions. When I was growing up, I always say this. When I was growing up, not to say that I'm that old, but we used to say pictures don't lie. When somebody showed you a picture of something, you used to believe it because pictures never lied. But nowadays, pictures are lying all the time, right?
Videos are lying, yeah.
You see, so that's the point. How do we establish trust when, anything can be altered? Like I'm talking to you right now. Somebody can take my voice away from me and make me say something I haven't said. How do you maintain trust in that involvement?
No one get any ideas.
Yeah, so for me, that's the point, is how do we really reach a point as a society where we are able to trust each other, because I feel like it's not only in science. When we're thinking about science, we're thinking about technology, and as we're advancing in technology, as we are making all these advancements, how do we emphasize on the need for us to build trusting relationships? And how do we use technology not to our disadvantage to promote distrust, but rather to promote trust? So for me, that's really a conversation I would want to have, and I would love to have that conversation with people that are like software development, even hardware development for different technologies. Let's talk about this. How are we embedding tools in our technologies that are going to promote trustworthiness? Because I feel like the more we're advancing in our technologies, the more it is becoming so harder to trust. Right? Anything? I don't know. So yeah, if I was going to be a student in the classroom, I would really have a conversation surrounding like the whole idea of like, what is trust? How do we really go about building this trust, especially when you're thinking about technological advancements, the coming in of AI? Like how, because as for example, if you can be somebody who is into animal production and animal breeder, you are working on something, you can talk about, okay, I have come up with this new breed of livestock, or maybe breed of pork, for example, and somebody can change what you have come up with. They can use AI to say, okay, what the person is talking about is going to have these effects on your body. And they can create images and visuals that people look at that even if you try to bring in the facts, you can't even convince anybody. So how do we use the technology in the same way to come up with tools that we can build trust and know that as scientists, we're not out there to just destroy the world? So for me, that's the main thing.
Yeah, I like that. I really like that. So that was my last question, and I wanted to thank you again for coming on today to introduce season 3 and give listeners a little bit of an introduction into the next season and the students' awesome work. Like you said, the students were great this semester. I think one thing that really stood out to me was how helpful everyone was to each other. Whenever someone was like, "This is a topic I'm going to do," people were like, "Oh, I know someone you can interview." Like they really. There was a lot of in-group bonding that's true. That I thought was really cool.
Yeah, that's really true. And yeah, even for our listeners, just in case next time you have another season and Sidney's voice is not here anymore, Sidney is going to be graduating in May. I don't know how I'm going to continue. So if you hear a new voice on this podcast, know that it's because Sidney is going to be graduating. So
don't make me cry.
Yeah, it's so emotional for me. I don't know. Maybe we'll see. Maybe me and her can continue to collaborate on this and we can still continue having this podcast because she's the voice of our podcast. So, yeah, so help me beg her to say wherever she goes, she continues to work with me and be the voice of this podcast. And with that, I said thank you.
One of the first things you said to me when I started being your grad student was, she's got a podcast voice.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, I know I don't have one, so that's why I can be the one doing this.
Anyone can have a podcast voice.
All right. Thank you so much, Sidney, for having me.
Yeah. And with that, we'll close out the podcast today. Thank you so much for joining us on the CAPod, and we'll catch you next time.
To email us with any comments, questions, or concerns, please send us an email at contemporary@iastate.edu.